Why can't I get this guy? Okay, I think I got the book.
Hell yeah, dude. Alright. I got something to show you. You're gonna love this, man.
Oh, I am?
Oh,
yeah.
you're gonna love it. Follow me, dude. It's
Okay.
gonna be awesome. So I just got it, right?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, we're gonna have a lot of fun with this one.
Okay. I'm excited, dude.
As you should. I was ecstatic.
Yeah.
It's gonna be beautiful.
What do we got here? Oh!
Right?
Oh, it's a skinny white boy.
Yo, wait, give me a shot with him.
Oh, yeah.
Hey! Who's awake?
Uh,
No, sleepy head. Hey, been down here all night with him.
oh, really?
Yeah. How you feeling, buddy? Happy. Huh? Well, that's great. Alright.
Just the cutest little thing ever. You're the cutest.
Thanks, dear.
Thank you, great.
Yeah.
I gotta, actually, had a little fun with the whiteboard earlier.
We coming up with ways to kill him?
Oh, going so many ways to go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Dude, I'm so excited.
Right? Oh, this is gonna be great.
Yeah. Oh,
Hey, don't move, would you? Awesome.
what do we got?
Alright, I've been thinking about a couple things, right? So, we're already here, right?
Yeah.
We have this. And I was thinking, like, shooting range kind of thing. I can't afford bullets.
Yeah, neither can I.
Okay. And then,
Wendy's does not pay well.
Wendy's, right? We can just take bags from the back.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And then it's like not the most fun, but we get to watch them, you know, like
Yeah.
6 years and stuff. Now, I do have like sticks of rebar or whatever, stabbed through the chest with that. Or you could peel off his face.
Ooh, that sounds good.
I think that's his face. Not sure. I don't really care. Hey, we're gonna have a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, let's keep on coming up with ideas.
Buddy.
You keep all little boys entertained.
You have fun now.
So unfortunately, I've been kidnapped. It's a little bit of a bummer, but I guess it's alright. You know, I mean, they treat me well enough. I got Wendy's last night. That was cool. Pretty sure they stole it from where they work. But I mean,
Hey, shut up. You don't know where I walk.
you work at Wendy's.
Hey, shut up! You don't know where I work.
You also work at Wendy's.
I think he's on to us. Shit.
As far as serial killer kidnappers go, they aren't that bad. Hell, they're even giving me a little bit of time to talk to you, the camera. I think that they're trying to record a snuff film of me, but I think they want to, I don't know. Is this so you like get attached to me so that when I
The
die...
Office? But
Oh, it's like The Office? You guys are Office
It's like
fans?
The Office.
yeah, it's like The Office.
Just like that, we saw The Office last week, and we thought, you know,
Was not a fan of the finale. Anyway.
well, I think you're fucking wrong.
They're even giving me a little bit of time to talk about something so that you, the viewer, can, you know, get to know me a little better. Now, unfortunately, I can't be as engaging as I would like to be because they've tied my hands, but, you know, maybe my facial expressions will be enough to convey my feeling. Since I get to talk about whatever I'd like, this whole incident reminded me of the film trilogy. The August Underground series, directed by Fred Vogel. The August Underground series is a faux snuff found footage horror trilogy, and I honestly quite like it. It's iconic for being some of the most fucked out there, but despite being panned by most critics, I actually think that what it stands for is quite interesting, and I dare say admirable. The films have all been really interesting watches, and I'd like to talk about them a little bit with you before I probably die. Is that the end game? Am I supposed to die?
You're dying.
Yeah.
Okay, alright, well, alright, I guess that's fine. I lived a pretty good life. I mean, I worked at Taco Bell. That's better than Wendy's, I guess.
Yeah, what are you
Oh.
How dare you disrespect my boy Wendy?
Yeah.
He works at Wendy's.
He also works at Wendy's.
Are you Wendy? Is that your real name?
No, I'm Rambo.
Oh, yeah.
Is your-
I'm Hacksaw Billy.
Is your real name Wendy?
Shut up.
I guess I'll get to it, starting with the first one. In 2001, the first film was released. It comes at a whopping 2.1 on Letterboxd, so yeah, it's not particularly well liked. I believe that one of the major criticisms would be that it's far too slow, or maybe that it lacks plot, or maybe that it's just generally disjointed. However, its lack of pacing, plot, and all of that is actually what I think makes the film work so well. August Underground's faux snuff goals are accomplished through its real lack of proper narrative. You're not really following the killers trying to do anything, you're just following them doing their thing and recording it. I believe that it's true, I'm not 100% certain, but I do believe that the August Underground series was inspired by Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, which I actually did a video on previously. Henry's one of my all-time favorite horror movies, and the middle portion, they actually have a part where they break into a family's home, kill a family, and they record it using an old camera. Very clearly this inspired the series, when you read that it inspired it, you can definitely see the similarities, especially when we watch the third one, which I'll get to. The first August Underground opens up similarly to how this video's opened up, almost like it was a reference.
Shut the fuck up.
Sorry. Essentially, our two killers, Peter and I think unnamed killer in the first movie, actually. And, they're recording outside their house, and he goes, "Hey, I got something to show you." And they go down in the basement, and what is one of the most iconic scenes of all of extreme horror, and reveal a woman tied to a chair, bloody and beaten. August Underground is, due to its extreme nature and its depiction of graphic violence and sexual situations, is one of the most controversial film trilogies of all time. This is obviously present in the first film, though, to be quite honest, if you're uncomfortable in the first film, I highly advise against continuing on with the series. Compared to the sequels, it's really rather tame. Not to say that it's the worst by any means, though. I actually really do enjoy the first August Underground. I not only don't find it boring, like I genuinely find it to be an engaging watch, but also I just think that it's a really well done thing. I think that what it sets out to do is accomplished perfectly. And earlier on, in the intro, I stated that I kind of like what the movies stand for. And I believe that this is most evident as it goes on and gets more extreme. But it's essentially the antithesis to the romanticization of serial killers in media. You see, stuff like Dahmer has only made, edgelord teenagers be like, "Oh my god, he's so cute and hot and fuckable." And I'm like, okay, guys, that doesn't seem very morally correct, right? They killed people. Well, August Underground is very much against that, I like to believe, because it depicts these killers doing what killers actually do, and it doesn't really hold back. Anything's on the table for these films. Don't go in expecting not to see some horrible shit, because, well, that's why it works so well. It's not gonna hide out any of the sensitive things. You're going to see what these crazed nutjob killers do, and you're not going to miss a bit of it. You're going to see every bit of their lives, from them just driving around and doing whatever, to their killings and tortures. Another aspect I like about the first film is its unpredictable nature. I'll talk about it with the other films, but what I really do enjoy is how there are many interactions where, in fact, they actually don't do what you expect them to do. For example, after getting kicked out of a concert for being a little bit too rowdy, you'd expect them to, I don't know, kill the guy? Because, they're serial killers. We've watched them kill people before in this movie. But no, they actually don't. They argue and they fight, but then they get back in their car and they leave. Meanwhile, when they're later on bonding and actually enjoying a conversation with some tattoo artists, we don't get such a happy ending. And in fact, they kill the both of them rather viciously. One complaint that I had on my initial watch, I've watched all the films twice, and one of my complaints when I first watched the film was the acting. I believed it was all subpar. However, honestly, on rewatch, I believe that this complaint was much less severe. I can't say that it's any stellar performances, but I actually quite thought that they were relatively convincing. Toe Tag, of course, is famous for doing some of the best gore in the business. Everything looks wildly real, and it's extremely uncomfortable as a result. I think that Toe Tag is really and truly the king of gore, and I believe that the August Underground trilogy is home to some of, if not the best, in all of horror cinema. Certain lines throughout the film just come off as wildly amusing and uncharacteristic. Each film, I think, has one that epitomizes this claim. The first being...
Can I get 2 women to take advantage of me sexually?
Next, I'd like to move on to the sequel. Mortem. The second film in the series, Mortem.
Hey, you can't talk about 2 films in one video. What are you? Angry video game nerd?
You weren't kind of talking for a while.
Do you want me to be quiet? I thought that the point was for me to, establish a bond with the viewers so that it hurts more when I die.
You're not super charismatic, but...
Yeah.
I mean...
I suppose I could be more charismatic. I can do a fun little... Ha!
That's pretty good.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
pretty good.
I think we'll allow it.
Just for a little while.
Yeah.
Keep it brief, will you?
Alright. What, are you not entertained?
Shut up!
Okay. August Underground's Mortem is the second film in the series, and there are actually 2 versions. I'll talk about both of them, but starting off with the standard release. August Underground's Mortem is famously known as probably the most disturbing film of all time. I don't necessarily 100% agree with that. I think I've seen worse, but it's definitely top 5, at least to my knowledge. Mortem is August Underground at its most vicious and its most explicit. It's just a non-stop barrage of grimy, sludgy violence. And where the first one is unpredictable and has quiet moments, and so is the third, the second one isn't really that. You have very, very brief moments of calm. Shut the fuck up, Rambo. Rambo, I'm talking. If you could stop that, please.
I have a tumor.
It's a wildly mean-spirited movie, where it seems like the goal is to just outdo the first in every way as far as explicitness goes. Ultimately, I believe this is the worst of the series. It lacks the unpredictability of the first, and while I like the non-stop barrage of nastiness, I just don't think it is quite as interesting. Mortem is, unfortunately, compared to the first and the third, boring. And I really hate to say that, and I know it may sound fucked up to people, but it really and truly is just boring, and I believe if you watched it, even if you're uncomfortable, it's just not going to be all that interesting, and you're going to walk out having said, or having thought, really nothing much of the movie. I believe it's unfortunate, because I believe Mortem had some of the most potential of the series. You have an entire group of serial killers in Mortem, even though it primarily focuses on Peter from the first film, and the new characters Krusty and Maggot. And they're siblings, and Krusty's dating Peter, but also is kind of banging Maggot. Yeah, definitely the weakest of the series in my opinion. I believe the script writing is also not particularly wonderful. Some of the lines are just stupid. I'm sure that I suppose it comes off as realistic, but where the first feels just still believable, there are lines where in this sequel where I'm just totally like, really? Someone would actually... I don't think someone would say that. You can't deny that Mortem is undoubtedly probably the most, technically speaking, interesting of the series. Like I said, since it's so wildly brutal, it's hailed as a kind of gore masterpiece. Its effects are all even more realistic than the first, which is baffling that that's possible to me. And it's just such a vile and nasty movie. The thing I can applaud most about August Underground's Mortem is the vibes. The vibes are absolutely filthy, and as a result, quite interesting. Feels like the film equivalent of sludge metal. Interestingly enough, actually, Mortem, I believe, was originally supposed to be a necrophagia music video. They'd worked with the group previously. And originally they were recording a music video, but they ended up recording enough that they were just like, what if we made some more August Underground instead? I think that's really interesting, and I think it's really cool that that's how it is. So, like I said, while I think that Mortem is the weakest of the series, it's probably the most interesting, especially because it had 2 versions. Originally, the actor of Maggot, Michael T. Schneider, was actually supposed to edit the film, and his version is referred to as the Maggot Cut. The Maggot Cut almost totally lacks Peter, and focuses more so on the relationship between Maggot and Krusty. Some would argue that it's more vile than the standard. I wouldn't. It's also about a minute longer, and then has some trailers for Michael Schneider's other works at the end.
Ready? Oh yeah. Go!
It's an interesting watch, because when I say it's a different version, I mean it's a different version. I'm not talking a director's cut or something. There are a lot of scenes that aren't in the original, and the way it's edited is actually much more quick-paced. Well, I think that this version is worse than the standard, because I believe it's a lot less believable with the way it's edited. It's edited more like just a weird horror movie. At the beginning, at least, scenes will begin and end, and go in rapid succession. Who's the singing killer?
Oh, that?
That's Jeremy. We're not talking about him.
Yeah,
He's in the closet.
Yeah.
Alright, as in he's gay or literally in the closet? Okay.
Both, honestly.
Some of the scenes are shared with the standard version, of course, but for the most part, I'd say that it's actually different versions of the scenes, or totally different scenes. I think that the Maggot Cut's a really interesting piece, and I think that it's often forgotten about. But it's different enough that it could damn near be considered its own film. And to those who watched the main trilogy and actually enjoyed them, if you haven't seen Maggot Cut, you should. It's interesting, and while I wouldn't necessarily say it's wonderful by any means, it's certainly an interesting piece. That's really all I can say about it. So, now that we're done discussing Mortem, I'd like to move on to the final of the 3, and by far my favorite, August Underground's Penance.
Alright, pretty boy, we're wrapping this up.
Yeah.
Can I talk about this last one? I promise I'll make it quick.
Alright, but can we get another kick?
You want another kick?
Just for the boys back home.
Just thought it'd be nice to tell you, because, we all nice kills. The way we're killing you, we're using this.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
cycle the iron?
Pretty effective, right?
I mean, it worked last time.
Yeah.
You're gonna love it.
I miss Jeremy.
Did he die?
But you say multiple people can't be named Jeremy?
Jeremy Irons, okay?
I forgot we killed star actor Jeremy Irons.
So, Jeremy upstairs is a different Jeremy, right?
Yeah.
Different Jeremy.
So you're not killing upstairs Jeremy?
No.
No, he rents the room upstairs.
Yeah.
Okay. He's chill with all this? He's not a serial killer? He's just chill?
He's in the closet, so.
As long as we don't, talk about him, we don't talk about us.
Okay, okay.
It's pretty simple.
Alright,
Now wrap this up before we.
Yeah.
Wah.
We're gonna have, as a reminder, we're gonna have a little fun with you. We're gonna kill you. We're gonna have a little fun with you. And then we're gonna have a little more fun with you.
August Underground's Penance is honestly one of my favorite horror movies of all time, and I know that's a very large claim, especially considering that literally what I do is talk about horror, but I absolutely adore this movie in every way, shape, and form. Without losing any of the realism of the first 2 films, August Underground's Penance actually develops these people into real characters, contrasting Peter's total psychoness and Krusty's. What's interesting is that Krusty actually gets a little bit of depth. While Peter is still a very, very shallow character, he works like that. Krusty, on the other hand, actually slowly kind of breaks down and hates himself at the end of the film. And without spoiling it, this culminates in, well, quite the interesting ending. August Underground's Penance is the perfect combination of the unpredictability of the original You know, the slow moments where just watching them do stuff, times where you'd expect them to do some horrible shit, but they don't. And the viciousness of the second one. While it doesn't quite get as graphic and extreme as Mortem, it definitely gets a little bit more nuts than the original, I'd say. Now, this is the one with the best camera quality. We're no longer on that really, really low-res shit. But I actually, unlike many, don't think it detracts from it. I think it just makes sense as time goes on in these killers' lives, and in the real world, it's only natural that at some point they'd get a better camera, yeah? I think that the original and sequel really don't get close to the quality of this one, yeah? Because not only is the gore the best in the series here, but it's just the most engaging. Well, I can't necessarily say this about Maggot Cut, Standard Mortem, or Original. I will be very honest with you. I think that August Underground's Penance is just plain fun. Yes, it's a wildly vicious film. It's mean-spirited, it's violent, and it's all around pretty batshit. But, to be quite honest, it goes along in such a way that I actually find myself genuinely having fun watching August Underground's Penance. Now, I can't necessarily say Penance is a perfect movie. It's not without its flaws. I believe that there are some parts where I'm just kind of like, that doesn't seem very real, does it? Not with the gore, that's the best it ever is in the series. But just in some of the scenes, I'm just kind of like, that feels a little unrealistic. But ultimately, I do genuinely believe that Penance is just the best film in the series, and one of my favorite horror films, like I said. You can't really go into the series expecting just some interesting view into the serial killer life that anyone can watch. This series really isn't for anybody, but in the chance that you're trying to get into extreme cinema and you don't really care about watching all three, I'd advise that you watch Penance. Even though I'd say it's a little bit more vicious, graphic than the original, I'd say it's a little less mean-spirited, and as a result, I'd actually say Penance here is a little more digestible than the other two films. Not that, of course, it's mild by any means. Fred Vogel isn't necessarily known for being mellow, is he? I believe that August Underground as a series is genuinely really, really important to the world of extreme cinema. Not only is it some of the most popular examples in the scene, but it's also some of the only ones that I actually don't find to be total dog shit. I hate to say it, since I belong to the scene quite heavily, but a lot of extreme cinema just plain isn't good. From being made in the worst taste humanly possible.
Ever wondered what the inside of a leg would look like? Sprayed, splayed, and filleted like a side of beef? Well, now you know.
To being pretentious. To just generally standing for absolutely nothing.
And all of a sudden there's like this explosion in my mouth.
Extreme cinema isn't particularly consistently good. The August Underground series is some of the only examples where I can actually sit here and tell you that I really and truly believe that these films are overhated and genuinely well-made films. And watching interviews with Vogel only makes this more interesting. A fun fact about the first film, actually, is the old woman that they kill is actually Vogel's grandmother. Like I said, a fun fact about Mortem was that it was originally supposed to be a music video. There's a lot of really interesting stuff that you can see, and it's really interesting, especially when you're watching behind the scenes of these movies, seeing how easily they seem to turn on and off the psycho stuff. You know, you'll see these scenes in the film, but then if you watch behind the scenes, you'll see the same scenes, but it instantly ends with, "Hey, are you okay? You're sure you're good? You alright? Okay, good, I'm glad." There's other times where actually when watching an interview with Vogel, turns out that they actually had safe words, because, you know, they're screaming, "No," and "Help me." So they had to establish safe words. It's good to know that the people on the set weren't actually having all that much real distress.
Oh, be dead.
In fact, Vogel didn't even come up with every scene. For example, one of the scenes in Mortem, where Krusty is, like, kind of attacking this lesbian couple, they actually came up with that, the three of them. So it wasn't necessarily just them telling the victim, the roles of the victims, like, "Hey, this is what's going to happen. They actually collaboratively came up with it to make sure that it would be both in their comfort zone, but also, give everyone a little bit of creative control. This really was seemingly a group thing. It wasn't just Vogel doing what he wanted to. I feel like a common misconception with the extreme horror scene is that everyone that makes movies or enjoys it like that, they're nuts. But in the end, I just don't believe that that's true. We can have a fascination with the macabre. Just some of us, I guess, everyone has a little bit of a fascination with it. I believe that just some people take it a little further. When, your shit-ass PG-13 horror doesn't do the trick, and your, generic slashers and whatnot, sometimes people like to take it a little further.
Hollywood definitely thought they cut off the balls of horror movies and, buried them in a small unmarked grave, but we found them and said, let's put these fuckers on and
dug them up and reanimated them.
Vogel stands for some interesting and genuinely respectable things with these films. And the films are entertaining, relatively well crafted, and overall wildly influential on the scene. And also, it's a good movie when everyone thinks that it's real at first. I suppose it's my time to go. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it's definitely your time.
Yeah.
Okay, goodbye, I'm leaving.
Wait, yo, you know.
What the hell?
Ow.
God.
Well, it feels good to be home. I'm glad that I'm safe from those horrible killers, and I'm glad that they got caught too. But now that I'm home, I've just been relaxing, and, it gave me a lot of time to think. Oh, hey, look at the clock. It's time for my interview.
So, you are Fred Vogel. You are the creator of the August Underground series, among several other movies. You're a director of many films I've enjoyed, like Final Interview and The Murder Collection, and you're an overall really interesting artist and a major part of the extreme horror scene. Do you want to introduce yourself in any other way, or is that good?
That's pretty good.
Great. August Underground is kind of one of those series where when people are talking about extreme cinema, especially now that it's been popularized in recent years, August Underground comes up almost immediately when talking about some of the really crazy stuff.
3 movies I know you wouldn't be able to finish, part 4. Coming in at number 4, we have the film August Underground.
Is there something that made you especially want to go so extreme, or was it just you kind of were naturally drawn to it?
I think the content of the movie needed to be extreme. Of course, at the time, being a horror fan, I loved movies like Henry, Portrait of a Serial Killer, and Cannibal Holocaust, and things like that. But for August Underground to work, it needed to be honest, and it needed to be brutal, it needed to be nihilistic. And I think because it's such a true underground film, and I didn't pull any punches, I think that's why, we're still discussing it 20 years later.
It's so mean-spirited and vicious and over-the-top and real. That's why it works for me, at least, because it
had to be.
Yeah, and I really like it because of that. It's really interesting to me. Do you feel that any moment in really any of your films have gone too extreme? Like, do you look back at it and feel uncomfortable during any of them in a bad way?
Not in a bad way. I think, you gotta remember I was in my mid-20s when I made August Underground, and now I'm in my late 40s. You change as a human. You get older, or you think, your perspective of things change. I think when you're young, there's a lot of, piss and vinegar inside of you. Toe Tag was one of those companies that we wanted to make the most extreme, realistic gore that we could, and it was very punk rock, and it was very DIY, and it gave us the freedom to do that kind of stuff and to really push those envelopes. the final interview, which isn't a toe tag movie and is just like a regular Fred Vogel film, I kind of took my foot off the gas when it came to a lot of the extreme content, and I really wanted to focus more on story and performance. But I think it's just a thing that comes with age. You know what I mean? Like I still love extreme horror and gore and everything like that. I just think once you tell those stories, you make the August Underground trilogy like I did. You don't. There's really nothing higher. At least in my opinion. I think they're pretty extreme and they still hold up, and they kind of are their own thing.
And Final Interview was a great movie. I actually watched it last night, kind of in preparation, just to kind of celebrate, and I really liked it. Actually, it was one of my favorite works of yours.
Hey, thanks. It's one of my favorites too.
With a lot of your movies, earlier works at least, they go so extreme that obviously they faced backlash, especially August Underground. Did you find the backlash particularly difficult to deal with, or did you just enjoy capitalizing off of it, really?
Never really enjoyed capitalizing off of it. Because when I made August Underground, I wasn't looking to be this extreme filmmaker. I wanted to make a movie that kind of just, provoked people and got some attention and would give me the opportunity to come in and make something bigger. But, when everything started to happen, people started getting review copies and writing back thinking that what they were watching was real. It kind of put a whole new perspective on it. And because of that, it introduced me to a lot of people that would later become parts of Toe Tag, like Killjoy from Necrophagia, and my business partner Jeremy Cruz, and Christy Wiles, and Michael Schneider, and things like that. In the early days, it brought a lot of those people to me, and was just like, wait a minute, like what if we made some more extreme kind of stuff, because we're just such fans. We all went to the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, so we were all special effects kids. You know what I mean? We love special effects. We love the gore, and we're just like, hey, why don't we just kind of like take this ride, because August Underground was starting to gain a little bit of momentum because of the Rue Morgue issue that came out.
Yeah.
So we kind of just just held on and let it take us for a ride.
Yeah, and I think that your love for special effects is very clearly shown, because it's really unparalleled by anyone else. The gore in your movies is so real, and it's great. I love it.
Thank you. It's all about it looking real. Violence isn't funny. Toe Tag never set out to be like, let's make some funny kind of violence. We always took the violence very seriously, and I think that's why the movies stand up the way they do, is because there's no joking about it. When it comes on, it's very vicious and very real, and that's how violence really is. So we've always took that realism to heart every time we made something. I mean, even like when blood's being pumped out of a sprayer, it's beating to a heartbeat. So everything try to look as real as possible.
Like, one thing that I don't know if it was made with any intention of this, because I think that at the time it wasn't really a problem, but in modern day on social media and stuff, when like shows like the Dahmer docuseries were released, people were like romanticizing these serial killers. You could find social media posts of interesting things being said about these killers, especially Dahmer and Bundy and whatnot. And I feel like August Underground combats that really well, because it's always like just kind of teenage girls that don't know or just don't really care, and then show them that and they'll be like, oh yeah. So I feel like it's aged very well. It's grown more relevant as time's gone on, I think.
That's just the gift that keeps on giving with that movie and those movies. But the reason why I made August Underground as well was because people were romanticizing serial killers. I was teaching at the Tom Savini Makeup School, and a lot of my students were writing the serial killers. And I'd be like, guys, like, don't look at these people like they're celebrities or superheroes. Like, these guys are monsters. How would you feel if your sister was murdered, or your mother, your brother, or father? And, that's really why I wanted to show the characters in August Underground the way that we did, with, like, being immature and not educated, things like that, to really kind of show you what, what you're dealing with a lot of sociopaths. You know, a lot of research went in to the characters and things like that. So we came off as real and authentic as possible because it needed it. You know, it's I could see how extreme movies and serial killer culture and true crime culture. A lot of that comes from adolescence and not really like having enough time on this planet. You're still young. You're still testing the waters with things, experimenting with different things, and it's easy to kind of be like fascinated by that. I know I was. I know, watching movies like Faces of Death was like a rite of passage when I was a kid. And I think that's kind of what happens with these with shows like Dahmer and Dexter and things like that, where it's just a lot of these people don't know about the underground and don't know about some of these movies like Henry or Cannibal Holocaust or August Underground.
Yeah.
And they'll watch. It's easy to watch Dahmer and think that you're watching something that's like super extreme, but really that's kind of like kiddie stuff compared to what I'm giving you.
Stuff like, iceberg charts and stuff have brought a lot more attention to just the extreme cinema scene in general, especially to this type of, like, youthful TikTok-style audience. Do you think it's good that that's getting more attention, or do you think it's kind of a bad thing because a lot of people just don't get it?
Every generation has something. My generation was tape trading and discovering stuff through the back of magazines or knowing people that had a collection of tapes that would be like, oh, you never seen this? Here's this. Young people now have so many ways and so many avenues to watch films and to discover things. It's so easy now. I think it's really cool. I had to work really hard for these movies and a lot of my films to become kind of cult and underground. I really, having them not accessible was an important key to make them as cult and give that mystique. Nowadays, now that Unearth just released them, and now you can get them from like Walmart.com and things like that, which is really weird to me. But there's more people on the planet that are interested in wanting to see different kind of things, or heard whispers in the wind of, oh my God, have you ever heard of this movie August Underground, or you ever see any of this kind of stuff? So I think it's different times, so I embrace it. You know what I mean? I love meeting new fans and talking to people who are just discovering the films.
So I feel like, especially with the new popularization of this stuff, you're very much known by people that aren't really immersed in the scene as the August Underground guy. Do you wish that this attention was more, like, equally distributed among August Underground and your other works, or are you kind of accepting that title?
August Underground, is a really big shadow, but as an artist, for any of your art to have last as long as my movies have lasted in the annals of pop culture and underground culture of horror, extreme horror, I'm very proud of that. I don't mind being the August Underground guy. I chose to be him. I chose to be the actor in the films. I chose to be the director of these movies. I chose to take the brunt of all the bad reviews, all the good reviews, all the hate, all the love, all of that, because I didn't want anybody else to have to go through that one. I knew what we were doing was making something that was going to push a lot of envelopes and you get people kind of worked up, and I just didn't want to put that burden on anybody but myself.
That's an interesting way of viewing it. I like that way of viewing it, because I feel like, a lot of artists, like, I don't know, this is a weird comparison, but like Radiohead hates Creep. It's the thing that brings them their attention, but you kind of accept that title in a very respectable way, and I think that's interesting, because a lot of people wouldn't. A lot of people would be frustrated that they don't get as even attention, I suppose.
Well, I think if once you become a fan of mine and you discover my work, you want to find out what else I did. And when you watch The Redson Tower for the first time and you're like, oh my God, like, what is this movie? Or you watch Murder Collection or Maskhead or Cella Turcica, and you're like, wow, I had no idea that this guy makes all different kinds of movies and he's not just a snuff guy. It's just that, August Underground just was kind of like the right movie at the right moment in time. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a huge influence on me, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time. And I remember, back in like 2003, um, Gunnar Hansen, who played Leatherface, had an opportunity to watch August Underground at a screening. And I remember being so nervous. Um, and when he came out of the screening, he said to me, he's just like, Fred, he's like, this is your Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's like, the last time I felt the way that I feel right now was when we watched the first screening of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. He's like, your movie is so raw and so brutal. And it meant so much to me to get that compliment from somebody who I admire so much. And then really, stepping back in retrospect 20 years later and being like, wow, look how August Underground has stood the test of time. Look how people are still discovering it. Look how people are getting it tattooed on their skin. Look how it's influenced a whole new generation of filmmakers and mainstream filmmakers and people who might not want to admit it, but know they've seen it and know, that it's, hey, let's take a little bit from this. A lot of mainstream likes to take from the underground, which isn't a bad thing. It's always been that way. All the great punk rock was ripped off and then turned into pop music, so.
Yeah.
I look at it as, these are, I make these movies. This is my art. I need to express myself. I need to get it out. During my little Frankensteins, I make them in my lab and then I release them to the countryside,
So I feel like a lot of people assume that it was like really unpleasant and horrible and unsafe, but you've gone on record to say that you had like safe words and things to make sure that everyone was okay. Do you think that at least the vast majority of the people that have worked on your movies look back at it, at the process of making them, with fond memories, or do you think that it's kind of a weird memory for some?
No, I think, at the time, definitely fond. And I'm sure a lot of people who have been in the earlier works when they were in their 20s, and now they're parents, they might want to not really tell their kids what they've done or anything like that. But that's just the way it is. You know what I mean? When you're young and you're expressing yourself and you're doing art, it's easy to get naked and have a fake nipple glued on.
Yeah.
And not think about what it's going to mean 30 years later, 20 years later. It's one of those things that I know that on every single one of my sets, it's always a very family environment. I take care of the people. I love the people who I make my movies. Everybody who's ever been part of one of my films, I am truly thankful to have them come into my world and help me create my vision. So, I hope they all had a great experience. I know I've lost friends because of some of the movies, because of just different, life changes and ideals change and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, if you go back and you really look at the experience, I think everybody was pretty happy with everything.
And do you stay in contact with a good bit of the people that you worked with, like Christy Wiles and Jeremy?
Oh, Jeremy's my best friend. We've been friends for 30 years. It's a little tough now because he's working out in Los Angeles and I'm here in Pittsburgh. We both work on big Hollywood movies, now. Like Jeremy does special effects and builds all these suits for the Marvel movies, and I just got done working on Paramount's Mayor of Kingstown with Jeremy. So him and I stay in touch. Christy moved on from the whole extreme horror world and everything like that, and as a mother, and she found God. We still keep in touch here and there, but much love for her. Toe Tag wouldn't have been with what it is without her. Those movies too. But I try to stay in touch with a lot of people, from the films. Damien Marusak, who was in Final Interview and Maskhead and Murder Collection and Cell Tersica. He's another one of my best friends who I see constantly. But so I'm, we're, like I said, it's a family. So like once you're in, you're in.
So do you think, obviously you're done with a lot of the Toe Tag stuff. Toe Tag's kind of over, but Do you think that you'll be
On
creating
hold.
movies for?
Just on hold.
Okay, that's good. I'm glad to hear that, actually. But do you think you're
Yeah.
going to continue creating movies for most of your life until you basically can't, or do you think that?
I hope so. It's hard. It just gets harder and harder the more experienced I get. You know, I get better. I make bigger movies. It's more money. You know, The Final Interview was my most expensive movie. It was my first SAG movie. I had movie stars in it. I had a movie trailer. I had contracts and all the big stuff, and that was done with it. So like obviously the next projects that I want to do are a lot bigger, and it's harder for me to self-finance everything like I used to. You know, when you're making a $5,000 movie, a $10,000 movie, yeah, I can afford that. But when you start getting into 75 to 100,000, 200,000, that's really where it just gets a little bit more difficult, and you have to try to raise that money. I'm not much of a crowdfunding kind of guy. I like making my movies for the people. I rather, raise the money privately if I have to. But, I'm hoping to continue making movies as long as I can. I create art all the time. So I'm an artist at heart, first and foremost.
I guess I'll just give you a chance. Do you have anything special, I guess, you want to share about your experience making really any of your movies?
Every bit of my career is a learning experience and growing. I try different things. I always want to like improve and test myself. I don't want to make the same thing. I could have made 50 August Underground movies,
Yeah.
But that's, as an artist, that doesn't really, fill the void. I want to try different things. I want to, I remember when we did The Redson Tower, which was my third feature film, it was the first time we had like a real sound person. And that's where I learned how to get room tone and do, how to mic up people and make the sound really good instead of just capturing it from the camera like we did in the August Underground films. I was learning, and then with Sela Tersica, with getting Camille Keaton as one of our leads, having an icon from I Spit on Your Grave, which is one of my favorite exploitation horror films.
Yeah.
But that was a big step. Who's going to be the first name to come into the toe tag family? And I think there was nobody better than Camille Keaton from I Spit on Your Grave. I thought it was perfect.
Yeah.
And then of course, then like with the final, getting better with me, artists and musicians, and having, people I admire in my films is always something that I love. Like I love how like the Murder Junkies show up in August Underground's Penance, and Scott Hall from Pig Destroyer and Steve Moore from the band Zombie doing the music for the Redson Tower.
Yeah.
So, I'm always, again, like I said, it's all about, stepping outside the box and growing and not being afraid to try something new. I think it's, some people, when they find their niche, they just stick with it. I've never been that way. I have so many ideas and ways that I want to create and tell my stories.
So you've said that Penance is your favorite of the trilogy in a couple previous interviews. I guess before I ask, do you stand by that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I mean, it's my favorite because it was the most fun and loving one of them. Mm-hmm. It was like, let's have fun with this one. Everybody that was a victim was a true fan. Everybody was we just came off the Redson Tower. We were on this real high, Redson Tower was really popular, and played the Fantasia Film Festival. And I knew, I'm like, all right, well, why everything is still kind of hot in our blood, like let's kind of jump in and make this August Underground film, because I kind of want to put it to bed. And we just had so much fun. The effects are amazing. There's just so much what I love about it. I mean, the first one is my baby, of course. It's the one that started it all. It's where I learned to cut my teeth in making movies and being a director and talking and learning with actors. When we made the second one, it brought Christy Wiles into my life and Killjoy into my life, and without those guys, the next 5 years, wouldn't be as important. They were so crucial to like what we were doing, going to Europe, touring with Necrophagia, with Killjoy, and then of course Christy being, the head of the art department, and her, being the lead in August Underground's Penance. That's why I love Penance, because it took the best of everything. It took, the best of the first one, the best of the second one to give us the third. And I really wanted to see the decline of the characters. I didn't like them. So it was kind of good to, see what happens to them in the long run.
Yeah, Penance is my favorite as well. I think that it's just the most interesting, I guess, because with the original I just enjoy because it's kind of unpredictable, and it's just kind of, I guess, charming in a really fucked up way, Mortem I like just because it's got such grimy, bathed in sewage vibes. But Penance I like just because it's very, the gore's the best of the series, but also I agree with you. I like watching these characters decline, and I like seeing how basically Peter just kind of, he's like this damn near emotionless, just vicious, unpredictable guy. Meanwhile, Christy breaks down throughout the movie, and I really thought that was interesting, seeing the way that happened and kind of having that added layer of depth to the characters.
Yeah, it needed it because, there's no real plot driven down your throat, even though there's definitely plot and character development in all the films. It's just not your traditional way of showing it. In August Underground's Penance, we really had an opportunity to use our characters to kind of like give more plot and make us have a little bit more, meat on the bones than just like maniacs screaming and yelling at each other.
So, I feel like this is kind of the forgotten August Underground thing, but Maggot Cut kind of doesn't exist in a lot of people's eyes. So, you've done releases of it before, so do you consider that a true kind of separate entity from the rest of the August Underground series in a way, or do you think it's just as canon and valid?
It's, it's an unfinished movie is what it is. What that cut is when we still weren't finished with it. Like we did a test screening, and then we had like a premiere for it, and we were still kind of getting feedback on it because, again, August Underground's Mortem started as a music video.
Yeah.
So it was still like not there yet. And while we were making August Underground's Mortem, I left to go to Europe for a month and a half with Killjoy to do this tour with Necrophagia. When I came back, Jeremy and Christy were both like, hey, like, Maggot's been re-editing the movie. We really don't know how we feel about it. He's kind of taking, your character out of the movie. And I'm like, taking my character? I am August Underground, So it was just one of those things where, like, when I was away, it gave Maggot an opportunity to kind of like fiddle with things and not work together as a unit. It was kind of, he started doing on his own, and that was what Toe Tag was all about, being a group. Like, it was all right. Let's sit down. Let's work. We're gonna make this. Everybody's got to be happy with it, not just me, not just you, not just you. And so when I got back, the screening was already starting. We were getting ready to do that, and so once the screening was over, we released a few tapes. I think maybe like 13 videotapes of that cut that we just sold at the screening just to make some extra money. And when we decided to part ways from Maggot, we went back in and finished what I thought the movie needed, and I thought you needed to see that Peter and Krusty were boyfriend and girlfriend, and know that.
Yeah.
That's why that opening scene where I'm like, you're fucking your brother, like that whole scene, where you see Krusty being fucked by Maggot. That's not even Maggot. That's another person. You know what I mean? But yeah. I needed that scene. I didn't want it as sexual as it was. I think Maggot wanted to. Maggot liked how, he really wanted to put that sexual deviancy in there, where I was more about the brutality of the killer. In retrospect, when I think about it now, that's who that character was. That's who Maggot was. Maggot was a very sexual character, and Krusty was kind of that character too. So at the time, I was just kind of like, I don't know how I feel about this, because that's not what my character is. These guys should be more like me. So at the time, it kind of just, put a bad taste in my mouth. But over the years, I've learned to, appreciate and love those characters, as sick and twisted as they are. But the release that Toe Tag put out is the movie. The movie was made by Toe Tag. All the Maggot cut is just an edit from Maggot, and he shouldn't have been selling it back in the day. And, there was problems with there, and that caused a pretty big rift in the relationship with us that lasted over a decade of just being not friendly with each other. But in our old age, we grew and we talked and we kind of worked things out. And again, it was just two different artists trying to express themselves at the time. I don't get mad when people talk about the Maggot cut. I just think that it's not a better movie than the Toe Tag version. I think the Toe Tag version,
I do agree with you, yeah.
And that's what it's all about. You know what I mean? It's all about making the best movie that you can make and not being pretentious or anything like that, and showing your dick every 20 minutes or something.
Well,
have you seen the Maggot cut?
Yeah, I've seen all the releases. I couldn't find the Maggot cut easily, but I did end up watching the Maggot cut. It was interesting in comparison to the actual Mortem release because it felt entirely different, I guess. Like, there were, shared scenes, but it really did feel like it's just totally own entity. And I felt mixed on it because I feel like August Underground's realism is why I love it, right? But it felt like Maggot Cut was less realistic. Yeah. So
yeah, that was a big problem, and that was one of the reasons why there was the split between Toe Tag and Maggot. Was it was straying too far from the original movie. That's why I remember being not happy with August Underground's Mortem and being like, I got to make a third one. I got to make a third one to fix. It wasn't at the time it was to fix it, but not. It was an ego thing for me because I had this gift called August Underground, and I gave that gift to a bunch of people and said, hey, we can all share from this and we can make something special. And Killjoy put a little bit in there, and Christy put a little bit in there, and Jeremy Cruz put a little bit in there, and Michael Schneider put some in there, and Shelby Vogel put some in there. And it became this, concoction of like sickness that watered down the essence of what August Underground was. So once it was all said and done, and I had time to breathe, and I had time to like re-edit the movie and make it the way that I needed it to be, because I knew that we were going to go, at that time I'm like, going to do a third one. And the story has to have the arc. So the first one kind of takes you halfway up the hill. August Underground's Mortems takes you to the tippy top. And then August Underground's Penance is going to drop you down to the other side. So I needed that arc with these characters. I needed to have that arc. And I thought that the stuff that was the scenes that were kind of cut into the Maggot cut just didn't have that ability to give the film the arc that it needed.
Do you have anything you want to say, I guess, really quick?
No, just if you haven't seen any of my films, try to hunt them down. A lot of them are out of print, and so good luck. But you can still get the final interview at thefinalinterviewmovie.com. And it's my first thriller. Pretty proud of it.
They thought that they could keep Hacksaw Billy in. I'm gonna get you, Ghost.